Hello and good morning, everyone. And I just wanted to say welcome to day one of Truth and Reconciliation Week. And what a privilege and an honor it is for me to join here as a volunteer to open up and introduce you to our guest speaker. But first, I'd like to take a moment and introduce you to myself. My name is Dan Gibson. I'm the manager of an RBC Royal Bank branch on campus location at Wilfrid Laurier University. And part of what I do is help educate students and youth on their financial literacy journey to help answer any questions or help them understand, simple things like banking, credit cards, investments, the simple conversations that kind of build on that financial literacy. It is an honor to be here as the start of Truth and Reconciliation Week, and I want to introduce you to our guest speaker. Paul Prosper is the regional chief for the Assembly of First Nations and represents the Mi'kmaq Chiefs of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. Paul Prosper is also an educator with experience teaching courses on Mi'kmaq history, Aboriginal and treaty rights, and Mi'kmaq governance. We're pleased to welcome you to this session, Peace and Friendship Treaties, Atlantic Canada. Paul, over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Dan. Gwe ac me dalautio. Nin delwisi Paul Prosper, Delewin, Bakungeb Mi'kmaq Nation. I speak to you in the Mi'kmaq language, which comes from the spirit and geography of our land called Mi'kma'ki. Within my talk today, I would like to speak about Mi'kmaq spirituality, our treaties of peace and friendship, and truth and reconciliation. The traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people is called Mi'kma'ki. In Mi'kmaq, Don Wedabik Solti means where we come from. Where are our roots? A grand chief, a Mi'kmaq grand chief of long ago was once asked, where does he come from? And he responded by saying, we sprouted from the earth, much like the grass from the ground, where we can see the faces of our unborn rising up from beneath the ground. To understand Dan Wedabik Solti, we need to understand a bit about the Mi'kmaq creation story and Kluskap. Gisulk is our great spirit, the creator. Sitkamu is our earth mother. Kluskap was the first Mi'kmaq person created from 3 bolts of lightning. The first bolt shaped the outline of Kluskap, where his head was facing the east and his feet were facing the west. With the second bolt, his fingers, his toes, his face was formed. And then with the third bolt, he was set free. Later, Gippu, our eagle spirit brother and sister, told him he will be soon joined by his family. There was once dew on a rock, and when the sun hit it, an old and wise woman was created, Kluskap's grandmother. With foam on the water and with the wind blowing along the grass and landing on some sand, when the sun hit that, Kluskap's nephew was formed. Our creation story speaks to the roles and the responsibilities we have within the family unit and with the natural world. The Mi'kmaq have many legends involving Kluskap, which is like a god or a guiding spirit. This legend speaks about Kluskap, who travels to the north and battles the god of winter and loses. It was then that the ice started to walk on the land, forcing Kluskap to go to the south, where he convinced the god of summer to return. This created the 4 seasons. Kluskap taught us many things, and one of those things is the importance of maintaining a balance. The balance between the world of the visible, the seen, the external world, with the invisible world, the realm of the unseen, and the internal world. As Mi'kmaq, we maintain this balance through ceremony and prayer. For example, after we end our ceremony and prayer, we would say Umsit Nugama, which means all my relations. This means the winged ones, the 4-leggeds, the ones that crawl, the ones that swim. It means our relationship to all of creation. The Mi'kmaq are all about relationships. And the best way to create a relationship is through sharing. And so, to create a relationship with you, I would like to share a Mi'kmaq teaching. My teaching is this: how you see yourself will largely determine how you will live and function in this world. To see yourself is to understand and know your place. To know your place within your family, your community, and your nation. To know your place with Sitkamu, our Earth Mother. To know your place with Gizul, the Great Spirit. This is my headdress. There are 3 medallions in my headdress. There's the bumblebee. This is a tree with roots. And this is a star. Each of these symbols remind me of my place within the natural world. I have an affinity to bees and all they do for the environment and how they help us as human beings. So with this section, I'm certainly open to any questions that you might have. I will continue. And if there's further questions, just let me know after my next session. Mi'kmaq Treaties of Peace and Friendship. Before the arrival of Europeans, the Mi'kmaq governed themselves through their own customs, values, and traditions. Through Gisulk, the Great Spirit, we were given the original instructions on how to maintain a balance and live on this land. When the Europeans came to our shores, the Mi'kmaq realized the importance of creating and maintaining a relationship based on peace and friendship. To do this, the Mi'kmaq entered into a number of peace and friendship treaties with the King of Great Britain. A treaty is a sacred agreement between nations. It is sacred because it was entered into through ceremony and it was witnessed by Gisul, the Great Spirit. Treaties recognize and affirm the right the Mi'kmaq have to maintain our way of life, which existed since the beginning of time. With Mi'kmaq treaties come Mi'kmaq treaty responsibilities. The Mi'kmaq have a responsibility to maintain and conserve the and resources for all our future generations. The Mi'kmaq do this by practicing Netagalung, which is part of the original instructions given to us by Giswold, the Great Spirit. Our treaties were signed by two nations, so we all have a treaty relationship. And in a way, we are all a treaty people. From this picture, you can see the various totems that were used when the Treaty of 1726 was signed. From the drawings, you can see how different animals or stars were used to represent the Mi'kmaq families or clans. Our treaties are there to protect and conserve the animals and resources who cannot speak for themselves. I'll open for any questions that people have at this point.
I would love to actually ask a question about the chief signatures here. Was there ever a time where, or what would be more of a consequence if somebody were to sign on behalf of someone else? Was that ever an issue with that when these treaties would come into play?
The person that would have that privilege to sign these treaties would be part of a series of discussions within their own community, family unit. They would engage in ceremony. They would engage in the sweat lodge and the pipe that would help them guide themselves to coming to a relationship and to sign a treaty document. So they would sign on behalf of their respective district, village, and clans. Truth, reconciliation, and the residential school system. This image shows you the Shubenacadie Indian Residential School, which existed from 1930 to 1967, which housed children, Mi'kmaq children from Nova Scotia, PEI, New Brunswick, and Quebec. The residential school system was a government program. Over the years, it housed throughout Canada 150 Indigenous children who were forcibly removed from their families and communities. There were 130 schools across Canada that existed roughly from the 1970s to the early 1990s. It sought to educate Indigenous children and were mostly ran by the churches. Because there were a lot of negative things that took place in these schools, the government of Canada was taken to court. The parties involved, like lawyers and representatives, settled and created the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement. And from this, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was launched in 2008. The purpose of that commission was to examine the facts behind the Indian residential school system. And in December of 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission provided their final report, which contained 94 calls to action. Those calls to action were viewed to provide a lasting foundation for truth and reconciliation between Indigenous groups and non-Indigenous people throughout Canada. I say this because there are many paths to truth and reconciliation. It has been suggested that one path to reconciliation is by knowing the truth of what took place in the Indian residential school system. Another path to reconciliation is to understand the truth contained in our treaties of peace and friendship. We are all a treaty people. And reconciliation is up to all of us. And those who can do something about it should. Reconciliation is a recognition and journey that each person must take in their own way. Reconciliation is not meant for non-Indigenous people to feel guilty or bad about who they are or where they come from. So some of you might be asking, what is my path towards truth and reconciliation? And I can't answer that question for you. In our culture, when we have an important question, we would visit a wise and respected elder in our community. We would bring a gift like tobacco and ask for help, support, and guidance. And instead of getting a direct answer, and the elder would usually tell you a story about something they experienced. Now, the purpose of the story is to provide guidance to you and to help you find your own answer. Because when you are guided to find your own answer, you are most likely to follow that decision or take that particular path. So to guide you in your path towards understanding more about truth and reconciliation, I will offer you this story. This story is about Gippu, our eagle spirit. You might recall that for Kluskap in the creation story, Gippu was the messenger. Kluskap would offer his thoughts and challenges to Gippu, who would take him up to the creator. And in time, that message would come to him. So when you find yourself in a place where it is challenging and difficult, and you just don't know what to do next, think about Gippu, our eagle spirit. Gippu has that ability to take your thoughts to new heights. Gippu has that ability to allow things, to see things from a higher perspective. And when you see things from a higher perspective, you see how they are connected together, how they are interconnected together. Ask Kipu to guide you in your path towards truth and reconciliation. Find a perspective that is truly reflective of your own values and your own journey, because we are reconciling our past for a better tomorrow. A tomorrow where, as Mahatma Gandhi once said, be the change that you want to see in this world. Umsit Nagama, Walalio. I'm willing to consider any questions you might have.
All right. Well, I'm not too sure. It looks like there are no questions, Paul. But I wanted to say an incredible session, and thank you so much for sharing your journeys, your learnings, your experiences. My personal biggest takeaway, I have actually a number, and I could listen to some of the stories that you have, especially around those emblems on your Chiefs hat. But one thing, we are all one treaty. Absolutely love that. A really good mindset for us to consider when we engage as civilization and communities, and then also that everyone's reconciliation journey is different. There is no right or wrong way. We all learn at different paces, and the important thing is that we do have that reconciliation and take it as our own pace. And it's a lot of good learning for me, and I personally want to thank you and thank everybody here on the call for attending day one of Truth and Reconciliation Week. So, Paul, thank you so much, and we hope everybody has a great rest of your week.